Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from the Wells Fargo Center here in Philadelphia, where the Lakers fell 118-104 for their first loss of the 6-game Grammy trip. They dropped to 2-1 and fell to 26-19. They remain number 5 in the West. They are a game back in the loss column of Denver for number 4 and a game up on the Clippers in the loss column for number 6. I've got a lot to touch on tonight, but before we do, you guys know the drill. As always, for those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. So, overarching takeaway, as I see people are populating in the chat. What is up, everyone? BC, Ibrahim, Glenn, J Note, is that Jan, Isaiah. What is up, everyone? Shout out to the late night gang. So, overarching takeaway for me is obviously it's a disappointing loss, and this one, I mean, I chalk it up to AD going out, and you look at the point where he exits the game. I believe they were up 20-17, and from that point on, they obviously get blitzed, end up getting out. I mean, they lose the game by 14. Really, it was 20 plus in the competitive portions of the game, and the garbage time group kind of makes a little bit of a run there. Dalton, I've called him a garbage time all-star. Dalton really does a good job in some of these blowouts of racking up fourth quarter numbers. And yeah, so I mean, he gets it a little bit closer, but like this was a 20+ point loss. And on paper, despite it being a back-to-back, despite it being the third game in 4 nights for the Lakers, it was supposed to be an easier game because there was no Paul George, no Joel Embiid. They were without a few other guys, Caleb Martin, and so missing some key pieces. And the Lakers have been playing obviously much better. Just beat Boston, just beat Golden State, and they had won 6 of 7 entering this game. So on paper, even with the context of third game in 4 nights, third game on the road trip, I'm feeling it, and probably will be sticking to an hour in actuality this time. I'm like really feeling the travel of I've been on 3 different planes in the past like 2 days, and it's just like it's catching up to me, just as I'm sure it's catching up to the team. So those were all like the context factors that kind of played into this. But again, they got off to a solid start, and they I forgot what the lead was early, but they seemed to be in relative control of the game. Then Philly, Maxey started to go off a little bit. They started to get out in transition. Lakers started to turn the ball over, and then AD. What was interesting is it happened. So Kobe Price of the OC Register, who's been a 3-time guest now on Buha's block, he went back, and I was sitting next to him at the game, and he tried to find the AD injury, and he couldn't find it. And I didn't remember seeing it happen, but at the set, I think it was the 7:16 mark was the first time out. AD walks over, and JJ comes up to tell him something, presumably about like some type of mistake or something like that. And they're in dialogue, but AD starts holding his rib area, and it was the left side, and he's clearly in pain and some discomfort. And again, we went back to try and find that play, that possession, couldn't find it. So unclear. Like, I mean, Yabusele, like seeing Yabusele in person, the dude's massive. So I was trying to wonder, like, did he set a screen or crash into AD on an offensive rebound or something? And that kind of messed up his ab or whatever. So AD exits 10 minutes into the game with an abdominal muscle strain, is questionable to return, and then does not return. That was basically the game. LA, like that second quarter was arguably their worst. I mean, I think it was their worst defensive quarter of the season, which is saying something considering how many bad defensive quarters they've had this season. But they allowed 48 points to the Embiid and PG-less Sixers. Tyrese Maxey just goes supernova and just eviscerates them. and they have no answer for them. I think they give up 12 layups in the second quarter, which is an absurd stat. Half of the Sixers' points were layups. They go to a 2-3 zone. They're trying everything. They go small. They go with Jackson. They go with Christian Koloko. Nothing is working. And third quarter, it compounds, and it's a little bit closer in terms of like the gameplay within the third quarter, but Philly still outscores them. And then going into the fourth, it's a blowout and the game's over. So I would say overall, like stinkers happen, and there's an element of like schedule loss, third game in 4 nights. AD goes down. Like to me, it's as simple as just AD goes down and this group doesn't have a chance. And I know that's like an oversimplification, and there was a lot of things. LeBron, I mentioned Dalton earlier. LeBron also kind of had the big fourth quarter where his numbers ended up looking better, but through the first 3 quarters when the game was still kind of in the balance, did not have the best performance. Was though really the only reliable offensive option tonight. But he had 8 turnovers, so another that that was, I don't know if that was his season high, but it was in the conversation for his season high. He might have had another game with like 8 or 9. So he struggled offensively from a decision-making standpoint, and a lot of turnovers that led to Philly transition points. Then no one else really had it going. Like Rui had a couple of nice cuts early and a 3, but then he was kind of quiet until the second half. And Max struggled, DFS struggled. Austin was relatively quiet, but by his standards. They only had 3 guys in double figures in the starting lineup, and then Dalton had the big performance off the bench with 24, but really that a lot of that came in garbage time in the fourth quarter when the game was already decided. So LA actually shoots 51%, which is kind of crazy that they score 104 points shooting 51%, but they shoot 30% on threes. 87% at the free throw line. So they actually got to the free throw line as well. The difference was they had 22 turnovers compared to just 9 for the Sixers. And that led to, pulling it up here quickly, 27 points for the Sixers. So Philly outscores them 27-8 in terms of points conceded off of turnovers. And that basically is the difference there. Philly also outscored them 23-12 in fast break points, 56-46 in points in the paint. And I think I think there were already some things, as we saw early on. It's not like the Lakers were playing well. So I think this probably would have been a dogfight if AD was in the game. It probably would have been like the final 3 quarters of the Charlotte game where they're playing an inferior opponent, and for whatever reason, the game's close. But they're all, I think the AD factor, I'm not going to overlook that or dismiss how, like, just without AD, this team cannot protect the rim. And I actually thought Christian Koloko came in, and I want to save the AD part for one of my bigger takeaways, but I thought Christian Koloko came in, and I was surprised. Like, I felt he outplayed Jackson Hayes in the first half, and then Jackson Hayes got the rotation minutes in the second half, which to me was surprising based on how up and down I felt he was compared to Koloko, who was helping man the zone. He was helping protect the rim. I thought he had some really nice stops. And in my opinion, for pound for pound or dollar for dollar, I guess, in this case, because one guy's getting paid more than the other, I think Koloko has been the better value and probably just overall the better player in their shifts. And I know Jackson's played better recently, but for what the Lakers need, which especially when AD is off the floor, is rim protection, I think Christian Koloko has been clearly the better rim protector in comparison to Jackson Hayes. But the offensive organization was poor tonight. I think Crane just noted on X that it was one of their worst performances of the season. They went, like he said, 12 minutes without calling a set. So JJ also threw Bronny in there in early part of the first quarter because he gave Shake a shot. He struggled. Cam had been in the doghouse since the San Antonio game when he went 1 for 7, missed 3 layups, missed 3 threes. And so he was like, called up Bronny, let's give him a shot, but that didn't work. He said after the game, he acknowledged that Bronny didn't play well. So a lot went wrong tonight. It felt like no matter what, like things just kind of snowballed in Philly's favor. And I think if I still just come back to bigger picture, if AD's not available, the Lakers just aren't a good team. And even when he is available, sometimes they're an average team. So like, I think they are a below average team without Anthony Davis. And really, if anything, I think that the bigger picture takeaway or the overarching takeaway should be like, this speaks to the need to add a center and really a defensive center, because they need someone who can protect the rim and the defensive glass when AD is off the floor. And I think Koloko has been able to do it in spurts, but JJ, for whatever reason, I don't know, like, I don't know what it is, but it has not fully gained the trust of the coaching staff in terms of, playing over Jackson Hayes consistently. And it's not Jackson Hayes. It's just not. Like, there are certain, like, I think he's actually looked better next to AD than by himself. And that's fine. Like, I think AD's ability, they can kind of complement each other and like amplify each other of just being these 2 7-foot athletic guys, like, defending the basket and AD commanding so much attention that Jackson then can get offensive rebounds or cuts for dunks or whatever. But by himself, I think clearly like the Jackson solo minutes have just not been good lately. And, that's something that they have to address. So that would, I guess, be my biggest picture takeaway from all this. But overall, certainly not a good game on a lot of fronts by basically everyone or close to everyone. But to me, it's just like, it comes down to if they don't have AD, it's just like, I mean, we saw what happened, right? They lose to a Sixers team that's without 2 of their 3 best players. So stat of the night to me, and I know you guys are going to enjoy this one. The Lakers are now 1-9 wearing the City Edition jerseys. The one win against the lowly Portland Trailblazers. Not a good win in the context of these jerseys. I think it's time to retire them. I know like they're not, because teams have to wear their City Edition jerseys a certain amount of times. And really what it's felt like is it's felt like they've worn them for a lot of big games, and they've lost basically all of those games, because I would not call playing Portland a big game. So anytime they've worn these games, these jerseys, they've lost those games. Bear with me. My brain is pretty frazzled tonight. I'm trying to be sensical. And yeah, it's gotten to the point though, where if like they lose the next 2 games, I feel like it's got to be brought up to JJ in a press conference, or maybe at a practice. It's a more like casual setting, but it's like, at some point, 1-9 is what it like. I don't know if they're cursed. I don't know what it is, but it has not been. It's been a disaster in terms of those jerseys. And again, I'm kind of saying this in jest a little bit, because I don't know if you're superstitious watching or listening to this, but I don't know what it is, but I feel like in the past they've actually done well with their City Edition jerseys. Just for whatever reason, these ones have not been it. But we could, from the actual gameplay, we can look at, I think the turnovers and the points conceded off turnovers would be my big thing. But in actuality, I'm going with the jerseys, because it's like, it's kind of been a running joke for the past like a month plus, but they've really, they've lost all the games. Like, I don't know what else to say. So that's my stat of the night. The uninspiring stat of the night. Takeaway number 1. So let's go back to AD's absence. So again, I mentioned AD is holding at his hip in the first time out in the first quarter, and exits the game late in the first quarter. And actually, I didn't see him. None of us on press row saw him go back to the locker room. We all were alerted to it on Twitter, actually, from fans. So that shows sometimes we miss stuff in the moment, because we're watching the game, and we were on the same side as the Lakers bench, but just being locked into the game, you don't see him exit. And then we see it on X, and then we start to kind of scramble and text the team and ask for an update. And then they eventually give us the update. He's questionable, and then ultimately that he's out. So as I mentioned, like, Lakers tried a bunch of different things. JJ said at the end of the game, as he was walking off from his post-game press conference, that he was like, we tried to empty the clip tonight. We made all these different adjustments in terms of who is defending Maxi, how we were defending Maxi, different looks. They went to that 2-3 zone again. They even had a couple of possessions there where it was almost like a 3-2 zone, where, you know, sometimes it's tough to tell between a 3-2 zone and like a 1-2-2, but regardless, that they had 2 guys down low, 3 guys up top, and felt like they tried a lot and just nothing worked. They went to Bronny early. That did not work. They went, you know, Max had a rough showing. No Gabe tonight. And again, I think they continue to miss Gabe. And this was not like Maxi went off for 43 points on 15 of 26 shooting, 9 for 9 from the free throw line, 4 for 11 on threes. 2 assists, only 1 turnover. So it was, I mean, he was really just chucking out there. But he also, if you look at the guys he had was supposed to be passing to, that there weren't many options. But Maxi absolutely torched the Lakers tonight. But again, I think between Koloko and Hayes, I just lean Koloko. I think there are things Hayes does well, right? Like he finishes well. He's a lob threat. I think he screens well. I think he's been screening better off the ball recently and setting those like pin in flares and of course screening on the ball and slipping. And he's got good chemistry with Austin. He's got good chemistry with LeBron. So there are things that, especially on the offensive end, that Jackson could do. And even defensively, he can block some shots. He's mobile. He can switch out onto the perimeter. But in general, I think that the most important things for LA to try to replicate or to try to prioritize when AD's off the floor are rim protection and defensive rebounding, because those are 2 weaknesses of this group. If you look at everyone else outside of AD, this group struggles with low man rotations, with protecting the rim, with boxing out, with collecting defensive rebounds. And also should note, it took me far too long to mention this, no Jared Vanderbilt tonight. He was a late scratch, second night of a back-to-back. JJ just said it was a precautionary thing as they're ramping him up. They want to be careful with him, didn't want to overstress him, playing him on the second night of a back-to-back. So no Vando tonight, no Gabe Vincent, AD goes out. And that right there is 3 of your top 7 or 8 projected rotation guys. So and we've talked about how the Lakers don't have the luxury of these guys, you know, just missing rotation guys. Like they don't have the depth, especially the 2, like those are 3+ defenders. They don't have the defensive depth. Like you lose those 3 and you're really relying on DFS and Max to get it done with the rest of the group. And that's putting more stress on Austin, on LeBron, on Rui, on Jackson, and on Bronny, on Cam Reddish. Like they didn't have the horses tonight to that's basically what it comes down to. And a big reason was AD went out, because when AD was there, like Philly was undersized tonight. They didn't really even play like a traditional center. I guess technically, you know, Bona was the closest, and he actually blocked LeBron a couple of times. Like he was impressive for a rookie, especially a second round, you know, pick. But for the most part, like they were playing undersized. Like they had one lineup out there in the second half where they had 4 guys 6'3" or smaller. It was like Darvin Ball out there with a 4-guard lineup, and not just any 4 guards, but like 4 small guards. It was felt like a flashback to the Christmas game when Austin played center, and it was like 4 small guards all there next to him. But I just think it comes like losing AD was just a death knell tonight. And moving forward, I still contend I would like to see more Christian Koloko than Jackson Hayes, but I don't think that's going to happen. It doesn't seem to be in the cards. And Lakers, but again, this is just a reminder that they do need a backup center. I still think they also need some perimeter help, because we saw Maxi cook them. And there's been, and even going back to the Charlotte game, Miles Bridges, like I still think they could use another defensive stopper type within the rotation and just upgrading probably the Rui spot. But of course, the backup center spot tonight was like a big reminder of the lack of reliable size on this team behind Anthony Davis. Takeaway number 2 is Rui over DFS again. So JJ says pregame that Rui is going to returned to the starting lineup. He missed the past couple games due to that calf injury. And then he also notes that DFS is still on that minutes restriction. He's trying to ramp him up to get up to 30 minutes. So not quite sure the relation between the two. It didn't seem like he was saying, it felt like there were two separate things in terms of Rui is starting and DFS is still on this minutes restriction, and we're trying to ramp him up to play more off the bench. But as we've been talking about on here for basically a month at this point, almost a month, pretty early, honestly, like by week 2 in the DFS tenure, it was clear he should be the starter with the starters. Since he has been a Laker, he leads the team in plus minus. That lineup has been, it's already fourth. Him with the other 4 starters is already fourth in terms of total minutes played. And it's been the Lakers' best lineup among the top 5 lineups that have played. And the starting lineup was it was a neutral entering positive. That they had a good start. I think they started something like 12 and 5 or whatever before they made a substitution. So they might be like a plus 7 now. But the DFS lineup I think was like a plus 30 something in or 20 something in like 30 minutes or whatever. So certainly should see that lineup more. For what it's worth, like Rui actually outplayed DFS tonight. DFS had a really rough game. He had 3 points, 1 of 6 shooting, all threes, 3 rebounds, 3 turnovers, 5 fouls, was a -2 tonight. Whereas Rui, though, 13 points, so more points, 6 of 9 shooting, did shoot the ball well, had several nice back cuts for dunks, 1 for 3 shooting on threes, only 2 rebounds though. He played 5 more minutes than Dorian, had fewer rebounds, did have an assist, only 1 turnover, but he was a -8 in the 24 minutes. So I would still say he had the better game tonight. Dorian, I don't know what it was, that this might have been his worst game as a Laker, or at least in that conversation. It was kind of interesting that like I know I try to kind of pay attention to what the fan base is talking about it. And I was aware of once I put out that Rui was going to be starting over DFS and put out the starting lineup, a lot of people were upset. A lot of people were criticizing it. And I saw it even into the game with how the first quarter and halftime were going, that people were upset about that. And I understand it. Like I get the whole continuity thing. I get the whole seniority thing, like a internal pecking order, whatever. You don't want to rock the boat, ruffle feathers, bench a guy, lose their confidence. But at the end of the day, DFS has, I feel like a broken drum here. I've said this almost every stream. He has, in general, outplayed Rui. He provides a skill set that is more in line with what the Lakers need in their starting lineup and around LeBron, AD, and Austin. The lineup data has supported it with that lineup, with comparing those 2 lineups. It's also supported it in general, with DFS being a positive in terms of plus minus and net rating and leading the group. And it's kind of been between him and Austin going back and forth with that. But, it seems to be, for now at least, Rui is going to continue to start. And I think it would have been one thing if they had lost this game, and maybe you could point to, okay, well, they won both games without DFS. They've been playing better with DFS. Maybe it's time to pull the plug. But because AD goes down, and that's sort of a factor looming over all this, like, unless they lose to Washington or something, I don't see them changing the starting lineup. I think it's going to be a bit. And then third and final takeaway is we got Bronny rotation minutes, and it was a surprise. So from where we were sitting, we couldn't really see the scores table in terms of who was checking in. So we heard this like groundswell from the crowd of just like buzz and started hearing like Bronny, but it was kind of disjointed. So you couldn't really tell like what they were saying. And then we finally like it clarified, and it was like Bronny, and we were like, what? And then we all kind of like peered behind the basket, and you saw Bronny checking in. So as I mentioned, because Shake had been just not good since he joined the Lakers, and Gabe was out, and Cam Reddish was in the doghouse after the San Antonio game, JJ gave Bronny a shot. He called him up, recalled him from the G League, and to Bronny's credit, he has been playing much better in the G League. I don't know how closely you guys have been following it, but he's had multiple 20-point games. He's looked much more confident. His jumper has been falling. He's been getting to the rim. The playmaking has been better. The defense has been better. Just overall, he's been a totally different player like now in the G League compared to, I mean, I was there for his debut, and his debut was really rough. There's really no, like, he had a couple nice moments, a couple nice plays, but like overall it was pretty rough on both sides of the ball. And he's shown a lot of growth and just development and evolution in his game from that point. So I think the way the Lakers viewed it was like, we're not thrilled with our options currently, so let's give this guy who has played well in the G League an opportunity. And so JJ puts him in sometime deep, I want to say like the 3 or 4 minute mark in the first quarter, and it does not go well, right? So I mentioned it, or like JJ acknowledged after the game that Bronny didn't play well. So like he was guarding Maxey. Maxey was honestly like, it's tough because Maxey's so good that I felt like he could have hit those shots on anyone. Like Bronny was staying in front of him, but ultimately because of the like lack of size at that position, and even in relation to Maxey, like Maxey was just able to step back comfortably and drain jumpers on him. Did get downhill on him a couple times. And then offensively, there was one time he tried throwing an entry pass to AD that got stolen. Another time, I think LeBron threw him a pass that went off his fingertips. Originally, it was ruled Lakers ball. The Sixers challenged it. Then it was ruled off Bronny. He went 0 for 5 and did so. One thing that he did do that I thought like showed one of his potential, like his, I don't want to say potential role, but a potential skill set he has within the offense and just at the NBA level is Lakers ran a double drag and he kind of slipped it at the end, gets hit with a pass, and then Jackson dives from the weak side corner. He hits Jackson for a dunk, and it was just a nice bang bang sequence of basketball IQ, slipping the screen, getting the ball in the short roll. I forgot if he took a dribble or not, but either took a dribble and hit Jackson or just hit Jackson. And again, it was like this nice bang bang sequence that I thought showed a high level of basketball IQ for him. But of course, as we saw tonight, like he still is a ways away from being a rotation caliber guy at the NBA level. I think it made sense to give him a shot given how well he's been playing and the other options. I think the context of when he got the shot could have been a little different. Like it was around the time Philly was making their run. Maxey was starting to heat up. I don't think he should have gotten like first quarter minutes. Like honestly, what they've done with Dalton is they often bring in Dalton early second quarter or like a few minutes into the second quarter more recently. And like that to me, like outside of when Rui was out, but like Dalton's typical rotation lately has been like beginning of the second quarter, kind of with that group. I think that would have been a safer part to kind of use Bronny in, but he was kind of just thrown into the wolves in like first quarter minutes, game's close, Maxey's still on the floor, and Maxey got the best of him. And then he struggled to bring the ball up and just make an entry pass. And like, it was clear that it kind of quickly compounded into just him not looking like he belonged out there. I thought the second shift was better, though he still didn't make a shot. And but there was a couple better defensive possessions. And look, he's a work in progress, and clearly not a rotation level player at this point. Again, I understand why the Lakers tried it, but it was a reminder. Like this was his first real rotation minutes of the season, because even LeBron, I asked LeBron about it after the game, and he said like, opening night was a moment. It was about those two guys playing together. Tonight was the first time Bronny earned rotation minutes. So I think it's like a kudos to him for playing well enough in the G League for the team to identify him as a guy who deserved a shot. I also, we've talked about it several times throughout the season. Like I think Quincy Oliveri is another guy who probably deserves a shot at some point as a two-way guy. And that shot has never really come, but Bronny got his shot. It did not go well, but I think LeBron said he's hopeful that Bronny will continue to get more reps, more opportunities, and that all he can do is control how hard he plays and just what he does with it. So we'll see. I have a feeling he probably won't play next game. Like Cam Reddish ended up getting a second half shift and I guess was fine against Maxey. Like he didn't really stand out, but compared to Bronny and Shake, I think Cam, of course, is the best player of those three and should be playing ahead of them. But that was just the quick Bronny impressions or impression for the first time in the rotation. And with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. I see we got some super chats. First one from Rusty Ocean. Haven't won on January 28th since 2004. Philly money line was so free. LMAO. That's a good note. And maybe that should have been the stat of the night retroactively was, LA had not won in 21 years on this date for whatever reason. And also fun or not so fun fact for Laker fans, LeBron has never won in Philly as a Laker. If you go and look and see, they've lost every year with LeBron. So I guess if I don't bet, but if you were betting, Philly probably was the smart call. Ali, if only we had better vet mins for games like this. This is a great point, and this is why I hammered this. I felt like a crazy person at times last summer when I was like looking at the back end of the Lakers roster, and I felt like I was just like, wow, this is so bad. Like, again, I've said it, in my opinion, spots 10 to 15 on their roster are like as bad as any team that considers itself a serious team in the league. And like, again, I think, not to rehash this, but I think if Cam Reddish and Christian Wood, I will give Cam Reddish credit for that stretch he had earlier in the season. But remember, he didn't start the year in the rotation. I think those two guys, if they didn't have that player option, they might not have been. I mean, Christian Wood probably would not have been signed just because of the injury situation, but he did not have like a great year last year as a vet minimum. He wasn't like a bargain for the vet minimum. Like he was a vet minimum caliber player. Same thing with Cam Reddish. The back end of the roster, it got better technically flipping Maxwell Lewis to Shake Milton, but like Shake has not been good either. So yeah, it's, the back end of the roster is really rough. Young Claire, do the Lakers have real interest in Lonzo? To my understanding, yes. He's someone I've reported on. He is someone that, to my understanding, they do have interest in. The one tricky thing with Lonzo that I'm going to pull up his contract just to make sure I'm getting the exact figure right. It's tough to keep track of everyone's contract, but I believe it's around 21.4. So with Rui making 17, that means that the Lakers to add at least 4.9 million into Alonzo deal, approximately. And none of the minimum guy, like that's above a minimum salary. The only guys making above that on this team are Max, Vando, Gabe, Austin, DFS, Rui, LeBron, AD. So basically, to trade for Lonzo, you either trade Rui and then, you trade Rui, but then you have to add a couple of minimum guys. And then Chicago has a bit of a roster crunch because now they're taking back two guys. So maybe you expand it and they add in, a vet min guy, but then you're still, even then it's kind of like, depending on how much they're making, you're still probably like a player short. So maybe you're now trading 3 minimum guys with Rui and they're trading 2 minimum guys, but they're still netting 2 players. So it is a little tricky. You could do, Rui and Gabe and expand the deal and maybe there's a bigger version of it. But his money and Bruce Brown's money, those are, even putting Rui in, it does get a little tricky in terms. So you can do a 3-team trade. Maybe you could aggregate a couple of minimum guys, but I forgot the aggregation rules are a little tricky, but yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible, but I think a 3-team trade could be an option, or not Philly, Chicago just waiving the couple guys that they get back, like Christian Wood is expiring, Jackson's expiring, Cam's expiring, Shake Milton has 2 years non-guaranteed. So you could do something like that. One thing with Shake Milton can actually not be aggregated because of when he was traded. So Shake could only be like trade dumped solo. So it would probably have to be something like Christian Wood and Cam Reddish along with Rui just to make that work. But then you probably have to send an additional asset to Chicago in addition to whatever you were initially sending. But to answer the first question, or to get back to it, yes, there's interest. It's just a little tricky financially to make it work. Matthew, Jovan, when Miles Turner plays his first game as a Laker against Indiana on 2-8, what number do you think he will wear? Well, he's 33? So he's not going to wear that because of Kareem. Maybe something like 35. I don't know what his second favorite number is, or like something in the 30s, I would guess, but it could be. Yeah, I don't know. Could he wear 3? Is anyone on this team wearing 3? Not off the top of my head. Maybe 3? But I like where you're going with that one. Michael D, I don't know if there's such thing as negative leverage in the trade market, but that's what the Lakers have right now. I mean, that's been the Lakers' biggest issue is they have had negative leverage in the trade market. And they've had guys on unappealing contracts. They've had limited assets, and they've clearly been in win now desperation mode to improve the roster. So that's a concoction that you put that all together, and that makes for difficult trade leverage, right? So people don't want their contracts currently of Gabe, Rui, and Vando to take those on. They want additional assets compared to just the going prices for some of these guys. And they know that they could play hardball with the Lakers because the Lakers are in a win now situation with LeBron potentially only having a few months left this season, but realistically more likely like a year plus a few more months. And them realizing that timeline and being like, well, we could, play chicken harder than the Lakers can. Like we can win this stare down because we don't, like, you guys have more to lose than we do ultimately. So that is certainly a factor here for the Lakers and something that they're trying to navigate. Jason Sutton, when did Cam Reddish get into JJ's doghouse? Thank you for the super chat. I feel like whenever he played, he did more positive things than things. He just struggled to make shots like Gabe did early this year, yet Bronny got minutes. So to the latter point, I was surprised that Bronny got minutes over Cam. I was surprised that Shake got minutes over Cam. I thought that once Gabe was out, they would go back to Cam because I just think he's better than both of those guys. The game he went into the doghouse was the San Antonio game because he was, I believe, a DNP CD. I'm going to pull it up here. Like in the next 3 games outside, and then the next time he played was in garbage time, and then the next time was tonight. But pulling it up, yeah, the San Antonio game, he went. Well, it's been longer than I actually thought. San Antonio game, they lose by 24. He goes 1 for 7. He misses 3 layups. He goes 1 for 4 on threes. He doesn't play in the next 4 games. Then he plays garbage time in the Boston game. Then he doesn't play in the last 2 games, and then he ends up playing tonight. I think it's more of a seriousness offensively. Like I mean, I thought that the San Antonio game was awful, and I understand why he got in the doghouse after that. I think, again, based on some of the injuries, like he probably should have been given another shot. I think one key difference that I would point to between the distinction here you are making is Gabe's offensive track record is much better than Cam Reddish's. Gabe was the number 3 to somewhere between the number 3 to number 5 option on a team that made the finals. Cam Reddish has never had that serious of an offensive role on like a good team. it's kind of been force feeding him to be that type of player on bad teams. He has struggled in that role, and now he's been rebranded as a defensive stopper. But I think that game in particular, with some of the wild drives and misses, and then missing open threes, like JJ was just like, I can't, like, this guy's too much of a negative offensively. And that game, he was pretty rough defensively. He was getting cooked off the dribble. So I don't think he's been playing as well lately. But to your point, like, I do think he's better than Bronny. I think he's better than Shake. So I would play him above those two guys. Angelco, yo. Thanks always for the excellent quality content, Jovan Buha. Braun, AR, and Bronny turnover crew, time to offer anything and everything if Fox is truly available. So this is the first time I haven't touched on Fox yet. I think he would make a lot of sense for the Lakers. I've talked about, like, that salary point in like the $35-36 million range is pretty tough for them to get to. So that's one complicating factor. The other one is that he wants to go to San Antonio reportedly. So that is the spot that, he wants to play for. And I think based on the contract situation of him being a free agent in 2026, we've also seen it with Clutch, where when their clients want to go somewhere, they typically get to go there. I would assume that San Antonio is in the driver's seat with this situation. They have a lot of picks, a lot of young assets. So I think if I was betting on it, I would bet San Antonio. Doesn't mean another suitor can't swoop in. But given the Clutch relationship, and obviously, his agent's Rich Paul represents LeBron and AD. You would think if the Lakers were a real factor, that would have come out by now. And if anything, I think there's been, I think Shams said not the Lakers. I think Dan Wojcicki of the LA Times also said he heard that the Lakers aren't in the mix for it. So I do think it's more of a Fox not being interested than the Lakers not being interested. I think if he wanted to play for the Lakers would take it seriously and try to pursue him, but it seems like he's not on their list. Dylan, thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on Dalton and JJ? JJ runs out on the court pissed at DK for not running a set play. Looks like this is a build up and more to this aggravation. So I saw the clip that you were talking about. I didn't catch it in the moment. I mean, this has kind of been, it's not just been this, like going back to the Boston game, Dalton lost Sam Hauser on I think it was kind of like a wide pin down, some type of screening action to get him to the opposite side. And Dalton loses him. Sam Hauser hits a three. Lakers are still up 21 at that point. It's early in the fourth. Game's basically over. But JJ calls timeout, stomps onto the court as he does when he's upset after these timeouts, and just like let's Dalton know about it. So I think that there has been a somewhat of a frustration sometimes with Dalton not running plays correctly or running defensive coverages correctly. Part of that is just being a rookie and learning those things, but part of that too is I think just a general attention to detail. And I think, not to rehash this whole situation, but like Dalton, one of the reasons Dalton slipped was because he didn't interview well. And I don't know how much that has come into play with some of this stuff, but like that was kind of a fear for some teams. It was, he just, did, like, some guys interview better, some guys don't. He apparently did. That's why he slipped. And I don't know how like what that has to do with him remembering the plays or attention to detail with some of this stuff, but it does feel like JJ has been on him and him making specific mistakes more so than other players. At the same time, I also think like JJ has, no matter how Dalton has played, he hasn't really buried him. Like there's been a couple stretches where he's basically been DNP CD or lower in the rotation, but for the most part, he's had a consistent role. JJ loves drawing up plays for him. Dalton was just named to the Rising Stars game, much deserved. So I think that was kind of more of a manifestation of like the frustration JJ had at the moment, rather than like just with everything going on, like AD getting hurt and the way the Lakers are playing, the way the offense was functioning. I think that all led to that. In addition to, of course, some of the mistakes that Dalton can make, and JJ's general frustration. Barry O, do you think the team has a conditioning? Thank you for the super chat. Do you think the team has a conditioning problem? Seems like D'Lo alluded to it. When they lose, it's mostly because of low energy / effort from role players. So one thing I will note here is it was the second night of a back-to-back, and I know there are teams that win on second nights of back-to-backs and still play with a certain level of energy or verve. This is a team that struggles with their energy and effort, so I think through that lens, like, they are also a team that on the second night of a back-to-back, I'm kind of going to expect them to not be at their best in terms of those things. I think it's more of a roster problem, to be honest. Certainly could be a conditioning thing. Like, we're not there during the conditioning portions of their practice. They don't practice a ton. So those factors could certainly play into some of this. But to me, it's more, I think that they have a lot of low motor players and a lot of guys who just don't play hard. And I think it's gotten better adding DFS, getting Vando back. I think Max has played a lot harder than he did at the beginning of the season. I think Gabe always plays hard. Now he's been making shots, playing with a certain level of confidence. I think LeBron and AD can wane in that regard. I think Rui can wane in that regard. I think D'Lo, as you mentioned him here, although you're mentioning him taking shots at the Lakers, which he has done recently. I think he was a guy who certainly didn't always play hard. I think Austin typically plays hard, but I think the offensive usage has sapped his legs defensively, and he hasn't been as effective as he typically was, or typically has been in the past. And Jackson typically plays hard, but I think there's just defensive limitations there. So I think tonight, I would say it was a combination to me of second night of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights. They lose AD early. They get demoralized. And this has been a group that we've seen it. It's one of their worst qualities when they get punched in the mouth. When they get down big, they tend to roll over. And there have been times like what game am I? This is my brain is fried right now. I'm trying to remember what game they just had the big comeback in. It was the Miami game. The Miami game, obviously they had the big, relatively big. It was like 14-15 in the first half. They end up winning that one and controlling the second half. So outside of that, though, they typically have had a lot of these bad losses where they get down big and then they just kind of roll over. And tonight was sort of that, although I do, like, without AD, it's hard for them to beat teams. Even like the Brooklyn game, Brooklyn had no one as good as Maxey, and that was a game that went down to the final possession. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. DK is in a rhythm again. Do you think he could still be in a playoff rotation when we are fully healthy? Without him and Rui starting, we don't have enough scoring off the bench, which is an issue. Without him and with Rui starting, let me redo that. Thank you for the super chat. If you guys can't tell, I'm super tough. I'm feeling the second night of back-to-back, so I'm trying, like, reading comprehension, mental skills are not really there. So I appreciate you all bearing with me. Dalton has been playing better overall offensively. I still think the defense is an issue, and it's something that has limited his role with the team. It's something that it's on the scouting report now that, like, you can target this guy, and you see teams progressively start to target him more and have his guy be the screener for ball handlers and wing scorers. So that to me is like, can he just get to not even an average level defensively, but like a not disastrous level defensively? That's where he needs to get to I think play in the playoffs. Right now, I think he projects as a fringe rotation guy. Come playoff time, I would assume if the roster stays as is, which I don't think it will, but let's just assume. I think it's a 5 starters with DFS, Gabe, Vando, and then that 9th guy is either like Jackson or Dalton, depending on the matchup, depending on the game, depending on what they need. I think the top 8 are a lock with, again, the starters plus DFS plus Gabe plus Vando. And then the 9th spot is if they need to play a bit bigger, they could go to Jackson. Because AD is going to be playing 42 minutes in the playoffs. Like, you might need Jackson for like a shift, or 2 quick shifts of like 3 minutes. Or if you need more shooting spacing, guys aren't playing well. then you go to Dalton. But this is also why I think DFS should be starting over Rui, because it makes more sense in terms of starting him and then bringing Rui off the bench, making him more of that bench scorer and shot maker, shot taker off the bench. And as we saw when Rui was out and the role that they kind of used Dalton in, I think it worked for Dalton. It worked within the rotation. It just made sense. And I think that's the role that Rui should be playing, not starting. And look, he outplayed Dorian tonight. He had some nice cuts. That he has really good chemistry with LeBron, and that there is something to him having that chemistry and that continuity with the starters and with LeBron and AD and Austin. And they can still play together. I'm not saying they can't, but I think for starting games, you want your two of your three best perimeter defenders out there in Max and DFS, and another guy that can kind of take a lower usage role. And then I think it also really benefits the bench to have Rui coming in instead of DFS, and then configuring different second unit looks to get Rui more involved and just get him in a better rhythm, because he's been very up and down just kind of game to game. So I think but to your point with Dalton, like, I think the defense and just how much he can improve over the next 35 games is going to be the big thing in determining where he is in the rotation, or him just getting back to shooting like low 40s. If he can do that consistently, he might just be too good to keep off the floor. Shibugan, once you get past AR, Max, and Gabe, you get to Shake, Reddish, and Bronny. Why on earth did Rob get rid of Quincy instead of Traore? So one thing with this is Quincy is back. He's on South Bay. Now he's not on two-way contract, so I referenced him earlier. Technically, he cannot play, but he could have played earlier in the season, and they really only gave him a shot in the Portland game for like a shift, and the shift didn't go well. So at least they gave him a shot, but I would have liked to have seen it in the preseason. I felt like he deserved it, but I digress. In terms of your question, like, yeah, it's rough. Like I mean, you didn't even mention JHS. It gets rougher. It gets rougher. So yeah, and then I would even look at like the backup setter. I mean, like, to me, Jackson's a third string center on a title contender, and Christian Wood is also probably a third string center. So Christian Wood's not even available. So yeah, I mean, I think again the back end of the roster is really rough. Shibugan again. We go into the season with Wood injured, and Jackson Hayes is the only backup five. Rob does literally nothing. What is he doing? This loss is on him. And I would point to Vando being injured. Like, they had two of their top six at the time, because you'd say LeBron, AD, Rui, Vando, Jackson, Christian, in loosely in that order, but whatever. Two of their top six front court guys were injured to start the season, and they did not address it until December 29th when they added DFS, and that has helped, and they've been better, and it's been trending in the right direction, but they still need a better center, and I suspect they will add one at some point here in the next week or 8 days or whatever. But yeah, like, bigger picture, that this is something that should have been addressed in the offseason, and they didn't do it. Golden, Rui and Cam plus a first for Rob Williams and Kamara, JHS and Wood plus a second for Davion. We add athleticism, defense, and rebounding. Thoughts? I like it. What I will tell you is the price for Kamara is higher than this. Just the price for Kamara. They want more than a first-round pick for Kamara. Add in Robert Williams, who they've wanted a first-round pick for, but I think is more of a, you might be able to get for a couple seconds. I think that the price here would probably be something like a first, a swap, and 2 seconds. I still would actually consider that. I think Kamara to me is like and I know the Ringer just wrote about him, but he's like a 3-and-D wing for a contender, like hiding in plain sight, where with Portland, there's of course a lot of attention on Scoot and Shaden Sharp and Donovan Clingan, and like, what are they going to do with Ayton? What are they going to do with Simons? What are they going to do with Jeremy Grant? And they have all these names and all these pieces, but I look at Kamara as like, that's a dude who like, I think he's going to have a moment on a team, like a good team, as a starting 3-and-D wing. And I don't know if it's going to be Portland, probably not. Who knows? Probably somewhere else. And he's a guy who if the Lakers could get him, like I think that's a no-brainer. I would just say that the price for this would be a lot higher than just the first, just for Kamara. Like Portland wants a lot just for him. JHS and Wood and a second for Davion. I like that because you're just adding. I would even do 2 seconds for Davion, probably, like if you're giving up those two guys, just because you're taking two guys that aren't playing and you're adding a really good defensive guard. He is small. I do wonder about the overlap with him and Gabe, and just like how those two guys could coexist, and if maybe you flip Gabe then in a different move for a wing, another wing or something. But I don't like love Davion and Gabe together, and I think with the way the Lakers minutes are, like it's going to be hard to not play them ever together. So that would be kind of my one thing. Like I'm against small guards in general. I think you should probably only have one in your rotation. I don't think you should have two. So that's just one consideration here. But in theory, to your point, you add athleticism, defense, and rebounding. I think the price overall would be higher for this package, but I do like where your head's at. Dylan, updates on Miles Turner, best trade target for LA. No real updates. What I have found interesting is there's been a lot more talk about Miles Turner since my report, or whatever you want to call it. Like I saw on ESPN today, Young Masuk was reporting that now Golden State is interested in Miles Turner. Bobby Marks had his giant trade breakdown today on ESPN, and he had the Indiana trade and the Lakers trade as a Rui plus a top 5 protected first round pick for Miles Turner. So there's been a lot more Miles Turner buzz in general. I don't know if people are just doing it for content or whatever, but I have noticed that like I put that out there and then it got aggregated, and now all of a sudden there's been all these fake Miles Turner trades and like reports of other teams interested. So we'll see. I think he makes a lot of sense for Golden State, and it would be interesting to see a bidding war potentially between them and the Lakers. But my understanding is Indiana is still kind of evaluating what they want to do, and it might not be till next week until we have a better idea. Carl Malab, thank you for the super chat. Other realistic options at the center spot, like D Sharp, we should stop expecting Kessler, Vooch, and Turner at this point. Also, shout out from the Philippines. Thank you. Shout out to all the Filipino watchers right now, all everyone from the Philippines. I appreciate you all. And I don't know what time it is over there, but late night gang, early morning gang, afternoon gang, whatever it is, I appreciate you. I do like Day'Ron Sharp. I think, especially with the potential price of it being like a minimum guy and like 1 or 2 seconds, probably 2 seconds because the Lakers don't have good seconds. I like that. I would be disappointed if that was like the big move. I would still like them to ideally trade Rui for something, Rui and a first for something. Doesn't have to be for a center, but if that's the biggest move they make, I think that's an underwhelming trade deadline, but I do think he could help and provide a different look. He's a better rebounder, better shot blocker, more of like a paint presence than Jackson. So from that perspective, I think he could give them, you can kind of like go at the backup center spot with different, like different looks depending on the matchup. And maybe there are some matchups where you want Jackson's mobility and his rim running and his ability to be, knocked over my water bottle, his ability to be like a lob threat, and then some matchups where Sharp makes more sense. But again, if that's the biggest move they make, I think that's a disappointment. I think there needs to be some level of giving up a first round pick and adding a real starting level rotation player to this group. Jerry Soriano, your lender for life. That's a great advertisement. I knew after all the star praise, AD would get hurt. It felt like, honestly, it felt like in the Charlotte game, I was a little skittish about AD getting hurt. It's felt like he's had a couple of like near things where he's grimacing in time. Like that's just kind of par for the course with him. Like he attracts bumps and ailments and different things, but he's largely been healthy this year outside of the foot thing, which he's been playing through actually. So like, if anything, he could have shut it down with the whole foot situation. He's played through that. So I do give him, I acknowledge that. I feel like a lot of people like to just pile on him and overlook that. So in terms of how serious it is, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, like JJ said, there's no update, and LeBron said he thinks AD will be fine. AD left without speaking to us, so we don't really know. But I don't remember if I mentioned that earlier, but now I did. Ali, tough loss, but I don't care. Let's go get Miles Turner. I'm Walker Kessler, Michael. I'm telling you, my brain is fried. Walker Kessler or Miles Turner. I'm on board with either one. And then Harry Chinani, Seawood averages 17 to 20 points for other teams. Are we giving up on him too fast? Well, he has to be available to average 17 to 20 points. So that would be my pushback to that. He has played better in other stops. I would point to a couple things though. Like the defense has always been a bit of a concern. The defense was actually respectable with the Lakers for the most part, especially when he played next to LeBron and AD in like bigger lineups. Another thing is he has worn out his welcome for a variety of reasons. But if you look at it, it's been a lot of 1 or 2 seasons in places and then bouncing around. And for a guy as talented as he is and putting up some of the numbers he's put up, it's like, why do teams not want to keep this guy? That's always a bit of a red flag. And third one, again, is just the injury situation. And like, he's now kind of in a Vando situation where he went out right before the All-Star break, right? Or he got injured during the All-Star break somehow. And he played in that final game last year in Utah. And that was it. He didn't play the rest of the season. So he's actually, we're coming up on almost a year of Christian Wood missing time. So I would have relatively low expectations for him. And ultimately, like, are they giving up on him too fast? Like maybe, but I think you have to make a move at some point. And if it's like, well, let's just wait till Christian Wood comes back and not go get another center, or if Christian Wood has to be the throw-in to a deal because he's an expiring, because the team's fine waiving him. Like if it comes down to that, I think you just have to trade him. Like, I mean, I think if we really are looking at it, like I'd probably rather give up, I guess, Cam than him. But even with Cam, it's like then all of a sudden you're getting into the Shake, JHS, Bronny range. So you could argue maybe Cam has more utility for this group. So he's not available. So I have no issue with them. I mean, they could even waive him. That's another option. Eeg, does Miles Turner require both first? That seems high. Also, Bruce Brown, Alonzo buyout possibility. I think if you offered both firsts, Indiana would probably do it. I think there's a way to get him without giving up both firsts. It is going to require one first, and I think it is going to require an additional asset. Is that a couple seconds? Is that a swap? Is that, I mean, when it comes down to it, do you have to throw it? Like, do you do like Rui and Dalton and a first and a swap or something along those lines? Like, is that like Dalton would be a hit to Indiana if we're just, being honest about it. I think Indiana would like Dalton for obvious reasons. And so I don't think it's going to require both firsts, but it is going to be a high price. And then to your last question, Bruce Brown and Lonzo, there's a major issue with both of those in that the Lakers are a first apron team. So because of the first apron, there's a restriction that first apron teams cannot sign buyout guys who are being bought out from contracts above the mid-level exception. In both cases, Lonzo and Bruce Brown are making more than the mid-level exception, which is about $13 million. Lonzo's making, as I said, like 21.4 or 21.9. And then Bruce Brown's making about 23. So both guys are above that $13 million threshold, which means that if they get bought out, the Lakers would be ineligible to sign them. So that is a limiting factor for LA with the first apron, which shows you why they were so Like the second apron is even worse. You can't even sign a buyout guy. Like the restrictions with the aprons are crazy. And there's a real reason why LA was being very cautious with how they navigated that. Because again, even now, it would be great if they could sign a Bruce Brown or Alonzo off the buyout market, but they can't. And that's because of the first apron. I'm going to go 5 more minutes, and the real 5 minutes because I still have some work to do tonight. I got a morning flight and I can barely put sentences together. Diego Cardona here. I asked ChatGPT how to fix the Lakers that it crashed. Look, the Lakers are gonna be fine. This is why I think you got to stay even keel throughout the process of the season. Like they just beat Boston, they just beat Golden State. Don't forget that. They lost to Philly, but AD played 10 minutes. I think if AD plays, they win this game. It might have been ugly, but I think they win this game. Dylan DeVille and Brooks, no update on AD. We should get one. Well, we will get one tomorrow. Hazim, Jovan, thanks for all you do. I appreciate you. Golden, would CP3 be an option if the Spurs get Fox and buy him out? I would assume so, just because he was going back to last season. I mean, there's been interest. We go back to trade reasons, right? Or sorry, basketball reasons. In 2011, there's been, dude, I can barely talk. But going back to basketball reasons in 2011, CP3 and the Lakers. Then more recently, before the whole Golden State situation, that there was, is he going to sign with the Lakers or is he going to get bought out and sign with the Lakers on the buyout market? So he's been linked to them for a while. There's the banana boat connection with LeBron. They are best friends, and I would assume they'd be in the mix. Like he still, to my recollection, has a house in LA. They never moved from their house from when he was with the Clippers. So I would assume that they would be in play and that would probably be his preferred destination. The issue I think ultimately is like, you still have Gabe, and I don't think it's wise for the Lakers to just get smaller. Now, Chris could help run the offense. And again, maybe you stagger those two and like you figure it out. It's like, it's better than having Shake Milton or, injured Christian Wood at the end of your bench. So it would be an upgrade in that sense, but like ultimately I don't love the thought of like a 6-foot Chris Paul and like a 6'1" or 6'2" Gabe Vincent playing together in the backcourt against Boston or OKC or Cleveland or Denver or a healthy Dallas or the Clippers. Like there's just a lot of teams that I think that's not the right approach. Ray says, damn, Jovan, don't worry about us. Get some sleep, bro. I appreciate Ray. I feel like Ray is always supportive and always telling me to get some rest. I was, I will. I'm going to go 3 more minutes. I'm sticking to it this time. Ali, can you do a live show next Thursday? I was considering that. I will keep you guys updated. So tentatively right now, I am writing a piece for The Athletic for tomorrow on my top trade targets. I honestly, depending on how much sleep I could get and like how I'm feeling tomorrow, it's catching up to me. I'm hoping to record my trade targets episode and breakdown of my top 10 trade targets. And I break them into tiers. I give you reasons why I like them, strengths, weaknesses, how they'd fit, and what I think is a realistic offer for each player. So hoping to do that by tomorrow. I'm flying to New York. If not by tomorrow, then either Thursday or Friday. Thursday is always tricky because I've noticed game day content doesn't perform as well because it has a short shelf life. Technically, this is more evergreen for like the next week. So maybe it's an exception, but if not Thursday, certainly I would put it up early Friday morning just to get that out as soon as I can. But I'm trying to get it out tomorrow. But we'll see how I feel. But in terms of doing a show on Thursday, I do. The Athletic's doing a live show, so I will be doing that at some point. But maybe like that final hour going into the deadline, or at some point, before then, and then maybe I take a break for the Athletic show. I think I'm doing it at 10:45. Then the final hour going into the deadline. The one thing is, the second the Lakers make a trade, if maybe they make a move a day or two before, and that kind of settles that. But the second the Lakers make a trade, I'm going to have to start calling people and writing, and like it's going to be code red doing stuff. So that's the one limiting factor. And just like the DFS trade, like I ultimately have to write before I go live. However, I regardless of what happens on Thursday, I will be going live at some point. So that, like the DFS trade, I went live for like an hour and a half. I will go live on Thursday talking about what did or did not happen. So do I go live before the deadline? We'll see based on how things are looking, but I will certainly go live after the deadline as quickly as I can and for as long as I can. So that is my promise. Mayu says, we lost to the Mavs by 24 without Luka and Kyrie. Did you forget that? I did not forget that. That was one of the worst losses of the season, if not the worst. C2 Cents says, get some rest, bro. I appreciate it. Dark Galaxy says, Walker Kessler still a pipe dream. I would say yes, but we'll know more in a week. I think, again, based like Utah doesn't have to trade him. So I do think there's an element here of the Lakers have to blow them away with an offer. But I'm warming up to like the just go, like the more I study Kessler and like, dudes, I'm going to spoil a fact I'm going to have in my trade targets video, but dude's 3 months younger than Dalton Connect, and he's already in year 3. And he's averaging a double-double and 2.5 blocks a game. He's the best offensive rebounder in the league. He's a top 5 rim protector, one of the best finishers in the league, shooting 74% overall, and just a monster around the basket on both sides. And then one of the best defensive rebounders in the league. So it's like he checks every single box that the Lakers need right now. Like when we talk about that JaVale archetype, that Dwight archetype, he has elements of both. He's young, much younger than those guys were. I think the current version of Kessler is better than both those guys. Obviously, Dwight's a Hall of Famer, and he was in one of his final couple seasons in the NBA. But like Walker Kessler is a beast. So I'm like, he's 23. He can grow with AD. Like that can be your 4-5 tandem for the next 5-6 years. Like, I'm really sold on it. All right, I've gone 2 minutes over. Michael D says, get some rest. Taya says, bro, are you still streaming? I'm tired. All right, that's my cue to get out of here. But I appreciate you all for watching and listening as I kind of rambled incoherently, and my brain is scrambled eggs right now. But I will be back tomorrow, hopefully, with the trade targets episode. If not, it will be coming Thursday or Friday, depending on how the schedule goes. I will not be in DC for the Wizards game. I will be in New York. My wife will be with me, and my brother lives out there. So we'll be having some family time around the Wizards game and around the Knicks game on Saturday. But I will be going live after the Wizards game from my New York hotel room, and then business as usual Saturday, where I will be at MSG, and then going live after that. So be on the lookout for my live on Thursday. Be on the lookout for the next episode of Buha's Block with my top 10 Lakers trade targets, ranked, tiered, and explanations as to strengths, weaknesses, contract, age, position, skill set, fit, offers, all that good stuff will be coming. I'm working on some player graphics, so got a lot of stuff. I don't know, for those who watched the grades episode, created some graphics for the grades for each player, and I'm going to continue to try and do more stuff like that with my handy dandy visual skills now, I guess. So thank you all again so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back hopefully tomorrow, but at some point soon. I will talk to you then.